the interventions done differently concept. This is all the stuff from healthy boundaries, like giving unsolicited advice is a turnoff. Unsolicited help, like trying to help people that don't want to be helped, is disrespectful. But giving people tools to have a respectful, really important conversation, the magic that I see in the work is when other people that have these relationships with the person they're concerned about, when they have that radically different conversation, setting healthy boundaries or communicating their truth in a respectful way, that's when I see people make changes.
Hi, I'm Barb Nangle. I want to welcome you to my podcast, Fragmented to Whole, Life Lessons from 12-Step Recovery, where I help people heal their emotional, psychological, and spiritual wounds and make deep, lasting changes in their lives. I'm the founder and CEO of Higher Power Coaching and Consulting, LLC, where I coach people on how to develop healthy boundaries. On this podcast, I share my experience, strength, and hope from recovery. I don't support or endorse any particular 12-step recovery fellowship, and I don't claim to speak for any particular 12-step fellowship. I also don't believe that 12-step recovery is the only way to recover. You might need additional help. My hope is that you'll find my words concretely helpful in improving your life, whether you're in recovery or not. If you like what you've heard on this episode, please screenshot it and share it on social media. And if you do, please be sure to tag me at Higher Power Coaching. This is episode 210 with guest Stephen P., Interventions Done Differently. Hey everybody, welcome back to another guest episode. I'm excited today to have Stephen on the show. I actually met him through the project I work on at Yale. I've mentioned it briefly a couple times, but I do want to say something about it now so you can understand how we met. So the project is called Innovation to Impact, and it's funded by NIDA, the National Institute on Drug Abuse, to teach substance use researchers about entrepreneurship so they can get their innovations to market much more quickly. And Stephen has been in that sphere because I host a virtual networking once a month, and he's attended to that. He also applied to be in our program. So on top of being a person in recovery, he is also an entrepreneur in the substance use space. So he's going to share his experience, strength, and hope of recovery and kind of work that into how he got to be doing what he's doing and tell you a little bit more about it. And then we're probably going to chat a little bit at the end. So I want to turn things over to you, Stephen. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. We've been talking about this for months, so I'm glad it's finally happening.
I'm really happy to be here, and thanks so much for having me, Barb. I really love your podcast and all that you're doing to help improve people's lives.
Thanks.
And appreciate the kind introduction. Yeah, talking about myself, let's do it. I'm going to do a little share of what it was like, and then what happened, and then what it's like now. I was born and raised in Northern California. I live in San Francisco now. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area on the peninsula. We were just chatting before about attention and loving attention. And when I was a kid, I got on my report card, excessive talking. So I came home with a report card for excessive talking. And I also got distracting in class. So those were a couple of the notes that went home to my parents. And I didn't know if that was a precursor to liking social approval and the validation seeking, and then, later turning to substances. But I was kind of bored and pushing the limits as a kid. So entrepreneurship is kind of where I feel at home. But I'll start off with just saying I love getting high. So I'm just going to come out right with that. And I've kind of reframed it because there's some shame around like getting high as like you're a sick person or things of that nature. I like just feeling good. I don't know what human being doesn't want to feel good. So I like things that feel good, and I don't like things that feel bad. It's really that simple. And that kind of got me into trouble, though, with not being able to tolerate the bad and looking for the good. So I'll talk about my first obsession, which was a precursor to turning to substances, is roller coasters. I was obsessed with roller coasters. And I wasn't the biggest kid, and I wanted to get on the most extreme rides, but I wasn't tall enough. So I was trying to find a way to, take a shortcut by putting some Kleenex in my shoes to like be taller to get on the top ride. And it worked. I got on and I just chased roller coasters as an obsession. And I remember down at a theme park down in LA with the family, and there was no line at one of the rides. And I just kept staying on the ride. And I went on the ride 7 times in a row until my father came up the back and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I couldn't get enough. So I didn't have a limit. So talking about boundaries, I had no limit. And I just kept chasing the high that the roller coaster was giving me. And as I was growing up, I really cared about what people thought of me. I wanted to be cool. I wanted what I know now is like approval addiction, they call it, or social, like just that social approval. And wanting that kind of backfired because I would try too hard. And I ended up experiencing a lot of bullying and getting picked on and a lot of social rejection growing up. And that was really painful and, like they would say, a trauma. So the paradox of trying to want to be cool, I ended up not being cool and fitting in, which that pain, I didn't know it at the time, led me to start seeking out what they call in recovery lower companions to like connect with, where I wasn't under threat of like being rejected. And then I also turned to substances. I got introduced to substances at a party, and it's like a lot of people say in recovery that once I tried it the first time, I knew I wanted to do it again. And I felt that like feeling of ease and stress relief. And I was like, I got to do this again. So that was kind of a warning sign of what was to come. A couple like stories around that is I look at this as like maybe a precursor to having a problem. Is I purchased a safe for my room. I told my parents I was going to save money and be responsible, but I was just using that to hide substances, to party with myself, have a private party at night. And my brother was concerned and was knocking on the door and saying, "Hey, what are you doing in there?" Like, that was really annoying because it was ruining my partying. But I could see now that that was a really kind of unhealthy behavior, if you will, like hoarding substances when you're 15 and partying by yourself. And I had a sense of pride that I was getting away with something. And as things evolved, they say one is too many and 1,000's not enough. So that kind of just sums up my story of not enough roller coasters, not enough social approval. And then the substances, like I pursued that and chased that, and it ended up turning on me like it does for so many people. I ended up going to college, got into a unhealthy relationship, blamed her all the time for my problems, and my life was really, really small. I was in the college, then I would go to the yacht club to drink, and then I would, hang out with my codependent relationship. And over time, the pain grew, and it got to an inflection point where I couldn't keep it together. And a series of events where, you have a problem when your best friend tells your mother. That's what ended up happening to me. That was my
Okay,
intervention.
yeah, that's a good indicator.
And I love him today. We have a great, wonderful friendship. I was really angry at the time, but he ratted me out. He told my mother, which she already knew and was suspicious and highly anxious about everything that was going on. He said, "Hey, I'm worried about Steven." And that was the most loving thing that he could have done, was what set off a series of what I call uncomfortable conversations. But it led to me attending a 12-step meeting. And I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what 12-step recovery was. I was just kind of naive to it all. And I was a people pleaser, so I just kind of followed along. And luckily I did, because I went there and it ended up changing my life. And my life went in a completely different direction as a result of checking it out. I met a lot of really amazing people. And one thing that really floored me was when someone says, "You don't have to believe it's going to work for you, but you could just see that it's worked for me," when someone was sharing their experience. And I couldn't talk back to that. I could see that they were doing better than I was, and they weren't getting paid. There was no fee to join. I was like, okay, I'm going to try this out. And I was curious. Plus, my life was not in a good place. So I ended up going back to college for my final year. And that was the best year of my life in terms of getting into recovery and a series of events happening. And one of my character defects, as you will, is like procrastination and doing the easier, softer way. So I looked up a meeting that was really close to my apartment. And I'm really glad that it was like being led to where I was supposed to be, but I didn't want to travel too far. But I ended up in this meeting in the inner city of Baltimore. There's a saying in recovery, from Yale to jail. And I grew up in a nice neighborhood in Northern California, and There's a lot of people in that meeting that had very different life experiences than I did. And some people had been homeless, some people had been all kinds of things. And they always say, look for the similarities and not the differences. And that meeting taught me more about a lot of my life than going to university did. I ended up really relating to people's experiences from being homeless, and just with the love and the connection and the kindness and really the honesty is what I could really sense, that no one was selling me anything. That really inspired me to keep going. And as I discovered, I had an aha moment that I was in school for music originally, and I just had this moment that I didn't want to be a professional musician with my life. I wanted to help others. And that was a result of getting into recovery and having these experiences. And so I remember calling my father and saying, hey, thanks for helping me with my education, but I want to make a career change. And I was scared, but I'm glad that I had a family that accepted that, and I made that pivot and moved back to California. There's a saying, like, when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. And I was working out. Exercise has been a huge part of my recovery journey. And I ended up having a conversation with someone that was also had a 12-step background and said, hey, leave your email at the desk. And he emailed me a workshop that was going on in San Francisco with some of the top doctors in cognitive behavioral therapy. I ended up going to that workshop and getting connected with these top doctors and getting invited to train at Stanford in advanced cognitive behavioral therapy, which really put steroids on my recovery. It really helped take things to the next level for me. And I didn't know at the time that I was kind of headed for entrepreneurship or thinking of it like that, but I had to be different and not do the traditional route of getting a private practice. So I ended up going into intervention work. And so part of my experience of being in recovery and this also like wanting to do things differently and everything that I shared about, which has been a blessing and a curse, like a strength and a weakness, to go against the grain, which is kind of lonely at times and difficult because you don't fit in. But then it's also a great place for discovery. So I've learned so many paradoxes in recovery, that there's strengths and weaknesses at the same time. So I'm going to go into the lessons learned through pain part of my story. And this really segues into boundaries. Like, that's everything you talk about, Barb, is I had to learn about healthy boundaries through having a lot of really unhealthy boundaries, and a lot of entitlement is what I really kind of see now. Is I just thought I was above the rules, or I'm special, or I won't have consequences. And the best teacher for getting humbled was pain. And so these stories, the first one was going into business with my friend who helped rat me out he also got into recovery himself. And we thought, okay, we're friends. Let's start a business together to help people, and really had our hearts were in the right place. But we never talked about our relationship or what we expected or any of that. And I like to say now, because I'm on the other side of it, it was really painful. Like, we went through a whole process of hoping it would work out, and then tension and unresolved conflict. And it just got to a boiling point. And I know a lot of people in startups have this problem with founder fallout. But the biggest part was not having healthy boundaries or being able to communicate those. I'm able to laugh about it now, which is the healing part of recovery. But at the time, it was one of the most painful parts of my life, but a great lesson looking back. So there's a Chris Rock thing where he says grand opening, grand closing. The company was called Complete Recovery. I call it Complete Recovery, Complete Failure. And now I can laugh about it. Yeah. So it's great to have the failure experience. And then the most beautiful part was to be able to repair the relationship with my best friend after all of that, and then learn about, there's boundaries in business and boundaries in friendships and boundaries in all these different nuances. And having communication is super important, so you don't just gamble that it's going to work out. And there's a song I used to listen to with a band called Blue October, and it's called Clumsy Card House. And I love that song because it's just basically a lot of what things I had built were just built on not a solid foundation, and they just would collapse. So the second lesson through failure was I wasn't done with unhealthy codependent relationships. I stopped taking drugs or alcohol, but I loved what they call love addiction, the chasing fantasies. And I really was vulnerable to sales pitches, what I call in the beginning stage of a relationship. Like we're all kind of, you put your best foot forward and you have a good sales pitch. And I was pursuing a woman who, amazing sales pitch. I thought that she was the woman of my dreams. And I just was blind to all of the red flags. I just didn't see, I only saw what I wanted to see and had the rose colored glasses. And I kept thinking that, if we live together or if we change this, it'll solve all of our problems. And again, I had to learn through pain that, ignoring the red flags and just living in fantasy, much like only thinking about the highs of getting high and how great that is, you ignore the hangovers and the health problems and all the other things that happen over time. So the same thing happened with that relationship, but what was a blessing. And I remember going to a meeting and sharing about how much I was victimized by this and how hurt. And they were just like, you have 3 minutes. It was the most healing thing anyone's ever said to me. You got 3 minutes. It's like your problems are equally to everyone else's problems. And it wasn't like dismissing or bullying and saying, hey, we don't care about your problems. It's like, yes, getting into bad relationships has happened before to many of us. And you're going to get 3 minutes to share, and then everyone else has a chance to share. And I think that was a huge healing thing just having someone constantly saying, oh, this is the worst thing. You're such a victim. That's what really kind of helped me move forward. I remember that vividly. And I'm grateful I hit a bottom with that relationship. And I was like, okay, I'm going to not do what I did in the past, and I'm going to do it differently. And facing being alone. And I went on a journey of like the eat, pray, love journey, if you will, like traveling the world solo, learning how to do all kinds of things. I didn't date or do any of that. And that was the best time of my life, to be honest, like going and exploring. And I don't think I'd be doing what I'm doing right now without discovering on my own, who am I without a relationship, or who am I without, needing a friend to be in the business? Like, who am I when I'm, in a foreign country and have to navigate a challenge and no one's there to assist? Like, that really builds a lot of strength. And that took me on a journey to where it is like now, coming into that of the lockdown and the pandemic happened. And that was, for me, a beautiful time. There's a silver lining to it, because it forced me, like it did so many people, to look at their lives and do a lot of self-reflection. And I started to, during the lockdown and in the pandemic, to do an inventory every day and do a daily journal practice. And I'd wake up and every morning I would have my coffee and start working on this. And the first part was just asking, like, really kind of like, what's my vision? What are my values? Really just sitting with myself and asking these deeper questions. And what are lessons that I've learned that I don't want to repeat? And I spent a year like doing some of this reflection, because we were all in lockdown, and I kind of created an identity crisis, if you will, by doing this. But it also was able, through the inventory, to connect the dots, looking back, and see how all of those painful experiences had a lesson in them. And then I ended up getting gratitude, and going through that really thorough inventory helped me recognize the path I wanted to go down and who I wanted to surround myself with and what I valued came into more clarity. So it's kind of a cliche, but taking your pain and turning it into purpose. And I discovered how much I'm passionate about entrepreneurships and taking what I've learned in music and then the training at Stanford with psychology, and then putting those pieces together to benefit other people. That all kind of connected. And what was a spiritual experience was waking up at 3 a.m. and having the idea of everything was online. So I thought online interventions, like, went in my head. I was like, okay, I got to look on Google and see if that's available. And it was available for $15. And so I was like, okay, I'm buying this domain. And it was, what I'm really excited about is that it just is, the name speaks for what I've been working on building. It's like to help people have a life-changing conversation to change their life. And that's what online interventions, the whole project is really, at its essence, is kind of taking my experience of what my friend did for me, what I couldn't do for myself, and then giving that to others and that don't know how to get out of that trap. So, and I don't mean this to sound hype, but I think it's real, of life-changing conversations. And I think that's what a lot of recovery is. Some of the people that I mentioned in that meeting back in Baltimore, it was life-changing conversation. It's almost like some of the people were screaming, and like you're like in a like a preacher, like screaming, but they weren't screaming at me, but it's just they were screaming because it was such a truth for them that I just could trust them more than I could trust the professor at Johns Hopkins, like saying, do your homework and come back next week. I was just like, where is this going? But when I would listen to these people at the meeting, I knew those conversations were real. Like it was no bullshit. So that's been what I've been doing for the last 15 years of my life. Is really, I care about the quality of conversation, and the power of conversation, and really the interventions done differently concept is, but this is all the stuff from healthy boundaries, like giving unsolicited advice is a turnoff. Unsolicited help, like trying to help people that don't want to be helped, is disrespectful. But giving people tools to have a respectful, really important conversation, the magic that I see in the work is when other people that have these relationships with the person they're concerned about, when they have that radically different conversation, setting healthy boundaries or communicating their truth in a respectful way, that's when I see people make changes. And it's really been a humbling experience to not have to be like a guru and say, like, I have all the answers, or you have to do it my way, or use fear to motivate people to do things they don't want to do. And it's like when somebody gets the tools to have that different conversation, that's what I see really shift someone's trajectory. And I don't believe in saving people. I don't believe that I like have those type of powers. Like some people claim that they're able to do that. But what I do believe is I can give people tools to shift their trajectory. It really was hard, as much as it annoyed me when my mother like shared her fear and her concern. And I'm kind of a mama's boy in a way. It's like I love her so much. And that power of a mother just saying, hey, this is terrifying me. This is stressing me out. This is causing me pain. I mean, it's really hard to go to the bar after that. And just like, I tried to get sympathy. I remember like getting into this type of thing and going to the bar and being like, trying to connect with the bartender. And she's like, oh yeah, have another drink. These people are too uptight, and like trying to get some connection with the bartender. But after a while, I realized they're just there to do their job and make money. They don't really care like what my mother gives a shit. And like, it's hard to like, it kind of fucks everything up in the sense of like, do I want to live with integrity and an alignment, or do I want to try to like have my cake and eat it too? And I'm grateful for recovery because it's really helped me into like an identity, what I call healthy entrepreneur. Like I really want to be healthy and walk what I talk about. And like I like entrepreneur because it's the freedom to like work with others. It's the freedom to collaborate on ideas. It's not about getting an award or getting that kind of thing. It's about really changing things for the better, and having the freedom to and influence to do that, and learning like things like this podcast that's just so much great quality information and real, like straight down the middle. So that's really kind of where things are now. And I'm just excited. We're very close to finishing the product of helping give people the tools, like a digital interventionist, if you will, like having someone that can help assist the families and others to have these conversations. And you don't need to pay a fancy consultant to do it, or have that. You might need some additional support, but really giving this tool to help people become unstuck. That's what I've been spending the entire lockdown working on. And all of that stuff that was inside of me, just the opportunity is like they say in recovery, this is a window of opportunity. I go, I hated when people would say this, a window of opportunity. Like, what are you talking about? But then I look back and go, every day is a window of opportunity, and we have a choice of like doing it or not. And all of these things, these sayings, these pithy statements, but being in these conversations is what has really helped me break through the trauma of the past. And it's humbling to know, like, I did not get here on my own. And I'm so grateful for the challenges. And there are many days. And this is one of my resentments to kind of rehab industry of like miracle cure, or like 30 days and you're better, or graduation and good luck with your life. It's my recovery has not been that at all. It's been an experience of ups and downs and pain and hard days and self-doubt, just navigating so many obstacles. And I've been doing this for 15 years. And the gift of my musical training is I understand practicing. Like when it says practice these principles, it doesn't say like you study and then you're good, which is what I want. Or like, you can just chill out and put it in the savings account and then you can just not have problems anymore. But I understand that, and what has helped me the most is people being honest about like how difficult recovery is, and how it is one day at a time, and how it is not like roses and sunshine and love and light at all the time. And just there's a lot of that, the positive. But I liked when people said, this is really hard, and that's why you need support, and that's why you need to take it one day at a time. And this idea of graduation or being finished, I don't buy into that. And that's my passion of how do I stay in this and stay well. So to finish here, it's my two purposes that have gone from recovery is better conversations. I really want to have better conversations with people, which is why being on this podcast is one of those things. Check. And the other is staying well. So that I think is the other side of the coin too, is like, okay, you have a better conversation and now you got to stay well, because you can't just bank on 5 years ago. And it makes sense. Like in all other types of, if I don't go to the gym, well, it's probably not going to stay well. I wish I could get away with, like I did when I was 21, you could drink and then you'd bounce back, no hangover, just rinse, wash, repeat. That's not how it works today. So I hope there's something that was helpful that I shared. And I love the ending of what they say in the basic text is we realize we only know a little. What a relief.
Yes.
I only know a little. And my story might not resonate with some people and it might for others. And just knowing a little is such freedom that I don't have to have it all figured out. And I get to continue to learn and grow. And I don't have the pressure of having all the answers. So thanks for having me on and the opportunity to share. And I look forward now to stop talking about myself and having a conversation.
Yeah, so there were quite a few things that I hooked onto. One was the 3-minute thing. And what I got from that is humility. Like my definition of humility that resonates the most with me is I am no better and no worse than anybody else. Because I am someone who comes from a space of grandiosity. And so the idea that everybody's story is going to fit into 3 minutes means like your story is no better and no worse than mine. You don't get any more or any less time. I love the idea of like practice makes progress. You didn't say that, but that's what you're saying. And I love also practice these principles in all our affairs. We do the best that we can. We're trying, but it doesn't mean we're going to hit the mark all the time. I'm really intrigued. Earlier in the story, you talked about taking what you learned in music and taking what you learned in psychology and somehow working them together. Like, what are you talking about? What was that?
Yeah, so I went to music conservatory for clarinet performance. And I wasn't proud of being I was like a clarinet music kid. And I was like, that's not cool, like sports and all that. That's not how you get to be part of the cool kids. But I'm proud of it now. It's like I love music. And there's a lot of components of the music training and psychology and in the entrepreneurship. So I go into that a little bit. So they say therapy is half art form and half science, because there is like the connection and these other things it's harder to measure. That's same with music, like the art, what you put into it, the real soul of it. Same thing with recovery, like how some people their shares could resonate, others not. And like you go to one concert, so there's a lot of different variety. I could say the dark side of music was perfectionism, because you're always never good enough. It's always like you have to get to the next audition or the next place, and the professors or the professionals are basically saying you got to practice more, you're not good enough. So that's a dark side. The competition aspect rather than collaboration. There's a lot of anxiety and depression I learned about in the music, and then substance use as well, just in that field. The positives of music is discipline. Like you have to practice. You can't fake it really. Like once you're in a lesson or you're on stage, it's really hard to like put a filter on your Instagram or like you can't fake it when you're on stage. And that really helps you kind of see that you really have to put in the work to get the result. There's the thing of like working towards the recital. Like a lot of that is like you have to do the step by step day at a time to be in good shape to do it. So all those things really mapped onto my recovery. And then in psychology, that all mapped on into the training of like working with the mind. And there's a lot of sayings out there like mental health is like they turn to mental fitness, like staying fit, mentally fit. And so I could grasp onto that of like, oh yeah, repetition. Like repetition is the key to success. It's like you're not going to be able to just have one session and then you're just cool. And like same thing with going to a meeting is like, oh my gosh, it's the same thing, it's the same people, but it's that practice of reinforcing the new behaviors. And that's I remember when I was taking a lesson, I had no rhythm when I was started out. I had no rhythm whatsoever. And this will talk into like the value of having a mentor. So I was looking at a music teacher, super patient with my lack of rhythm. Like, and I wish I had that quality. I'm still trying to work on being more patient. And he would hold my foot to like help you try to feel the beat. And week after week, and I just kept going, I'm not going to get this. I'm not going to get this. And like giving me these drills to do, and it wasn't working. And I just could not connect. It's like patting your head while rubbing your stomach at the same time. I just couldn't do it. And so I'm glad that I had a mentor, and this is kind of the value of support groups, is having people that believe that you can make it to like a year, or you can make it to 2 years, or you know, having a relapse, you can come back from that if you like struggle. And I'm just glad I had a teacher that was like, hey, we're going to keep trying this. We're going to try it, and it's going to happen if you keep going. And then I had the breakthrough, and now I've got great rhythm, and it, like somehow like in my brain, things connected. So that saying with the recovery of don't quit before the miracle, I always go, oh, I hate that stupid hook. But there's some truth to that of persevering. So there's a lot of music and psychology kind of go together in a lot of ways with just principles of repetition and practice and expression and communication and all kinds of different parts of it.
Yeah, that reminds me of the saying, it's a slow process. Quitting won't speed it up. I love that one. That's really, really helpful. So I am not well schooled in the world of intervention, but I've heard some fucking horror stories. And so I'm pretty sure one of the first conversations we had, you were sort of saying to me, here's what it's not. Like, so there are some stereotypes about interventions out there. So could you maybe take a couple of minutes to talk about like what it is about the interventions that most of us hear about, and maybe even the show on TV, and then how your online intervention is different? You gave a little bit about that, but I'd like to hear a little bit more detail.
Intervention isn't reality TV. That's just the first thing to start with. As I've gotten deeper into it, intervention, like the stereotypes of high drama, like you have to be super dramatic to make a result happen. That's not been my experience at all. The bullying people to do something they want to do, having a guru come in and tell you how to live, which is a lot of interventionists kind of have this come in and I'm going to tell you what you need to do with your life and put pressure on you to make a decision against your will. And it's not scare tactics. That's another thing that a lot of people that claim to be interventionists aren't trained. That's a big problem. Then they also don't understand ethics, and having ethics to respect people's confidentiality, people's autonomy. And then a lot of interventionists that go wrong are lack of preparation. The real secret sauce of intervention is preparation, which makes sense. Like if you don't prepare the ingredients for cooking something and you just kind of throw it all in, like, I don't know if it's going to be a great meal. I mean, just that. Or if you don't prepare for like the recital and you just go on stage, like I took some time to think about this conversation with you because I didn't want to waste your listeners' time and wanted to think through what I wanted to say that would be helpful to the audience and, you know, clarify. If I didn't do that, I don't think it would be as good of a conversation. So there's a lot of people that don't prepare. That's a stereotype. Just go in. And confrontation, that's another stereotype. Like you have to confront the person and scapegoat them. And just to kind of put it in the lens of healthy boundaries is intervention. There's just a lack of healthy boundaries in a lot of way. And it's on both sides. There's people who are addicted who don't have good boundaries, and then there are providers who kind of latch onto that. And I really pride myself when I say interventions done differently. There's a step-by-step process to help people make decisions that feel best for them. And it wouldn't get a camera, it wouldn't get attention because it's healthy. It's not really dramatic. I mean, I love watching Netflix before, winding down, but it's like, I don't want that for one of the most important conversations of someone's life. Yeah. So that's like kind of the stereotypes that it's a emergency, high drama. That's not how I practice. And just a different way of thinking about it, and what I've learned through the psychology training. Intervention at its breaking down, or like a therapist would use as a change tool to help people make a change. It's a tool an intervention you would use for helping someone change. There always are exceptions to everything, of course, but what gets the most eyeballs and attention in everything these days is extreme craziness. I've hit a bottom with that. So I don't have like the attention because I don't do those histrionics. I leave that to entertainment. So intervention is not entertainment would be like kind of a takeaway from like the stereotypes. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. And then you've sort of alluded to how yours is different by saying like, I don't like this and, we're not doing that. But is there anything more that you want to add so we can get a fuller picture of what it's like to have an online intervention through your company?
Yeah, so there's a lot of nuance to it. There's what I call the setup of like planning, like the logistical pieces. There's figuring out setting healthy boundaries, the whole thing of how do you respond to someone who's in not a healthy state. And then there's deciding and figuring out what you're going to communicate, your personal communication, your personal work. So there's a lot of different components that go into before having that better conversation or the intervention conversation, which is really about another way of thinking of intervention instead of like kind of that drama and aggressive and super high theatrics. It's conflict resolution. It really is what it is. And helping people define what their goals are and think through. I really like the analogy of I've had loved ones go through surgery and you get a consultation and you learn about the process and you get to know what the risks and benefits are. And the surgeon tells you what the procedure is going to be like. And there's a recovery period afterwards. And it's not just a one-shot thing. And then you ship the person off to a treatment program and you just go watch a football game and chill out. It's like there's a lot more to it. And so I like the upfront giving that education. So a lot of what the company does is educate how to do it effectively. And the biggest belief that I have, which kind of puts me out of a job a little bit, is I believe a lot of people are able to do it themselves without the assistance of, they may need some support from a professional, but if you have the right tools, you could have these conversations privately.
Yeah, I identify with putting myself out of a job. Like my goal, really, like my secret goal that now is no longer going to be secret, is I want 8 billion people with healthy boundaries in this world. Because can you imagine if everybody was minding their own business and staying out of other people's shit, what that would be like? And what I really want is to work with people in such a way that they don't need me anymore. But there's 8 billion of us, so more people will be needing me. Well, this has really been a wonderful conversation. I've appreciated, and it's funny how like you live in a different region of the country and you have all these sayings. None of them I've ever heard. Like I work for Yale University and worked for them full time for years. I've never heard from Yale to jail. That's so funny. I live in New Haven, Connecticut. There was a couple other ones that you said. I'm like, wow, I never heard that one before either. So there's so many. Cool. There's so many pithy statements, as you said. But any last words you want to share before we sign off?
I just have gratitude for having the conversation, the work you do, and just being on this path of helping other people improve their lives. And just glad we connected, really, and learning from. It's entrepreneurship it's lonely, and you don't have. You kind of sometimes go, am I on the right track? Is this something of value for others? And then when I see the reflection of other people that are doing something I really respect, and I'm totally aligned. What a great world it would be if like people stayed out of other people's shit, really, yes. Or like lived in integrity, like they actually lived their values and they demonstrated that with their behavior, or like we kind of could shift that we're on the same page with that for sure.
Absolutely. In fact, that is the core of my coaching, my boundaries coaching, is I have my clients identify their top 5 values. And that's how you know when and where to set boundaries, by what's important to you, by what you value. And it's getting into alignment with your values that increases your integrity, which is another word for wholeness. And so I'm all about that with my clients. All right, Stephen, thank you so much for your time. All right, everybody, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you next week.
I was recently reminded by a friend that when I first started recovery, I didn't feel lovable. I almost can't believe that I used to feel that way, and that I kind of forgot something so profound, because I truly love myself now. And I want that for everybody. If you don't love yourself, there's literally nothing that can make up for that. I created something exclusively for my private clients, since many of them don't love themselves. And I've now opened up my private vault to share it with up to 10 people individually. It's called the Self-Love Sprint. You'll grow to love yourself and truly feel worthy, so you can stop saying yes when you really want to say no. Stop neglecting yourself and putting everyone else first. Stop saying all kinds of nasty shit to yourself. That is not what people who love themselves and feel deserving do. You'll stop being afraid that others will think that you're selfish for taking time to care for yourself. This is also for you if you don't really know who you are, because you've always been such a fucking chameleon. Go to higherpowercc.com/love sprint. Remember, I'm only offering 10 of these, so don't wait. If you like this podcast, and I'm guessing you did or you wouldn't still be listening, then you're gonna love the other things I have to offer. If you'd love pre-release podcast scripts and episodes before anyone else gets them, or if you'd love access to content from my private vault that I developed exclusively for my private clients, which is like having a work session with me without me actually being there, go to patreon.com/higherpowercoaching. There are 3 tiers ranging from as low as $4 up to $24 a month. You'll also love my weekly newsletter, Friday Fragments, which has content very similar to the podcast. You can check it out at fridayfragments.news. That's fridayfragments.news. Please like and subscribe to my podcast on your favorite podcast outlet. I'd also love it if you'd leave a review, which you can do either in the show notes or on Apple Podcasts. It really helps other people find my podcast so they can get the benefits you've gotten from listening. If someone came to mind when you listen to this particular episode, please share it with them. And my favorite place to hang out on social media is Instagram. I'm at Higher Power Coaching. Please DM me there. I'd love to hear what you got from this episode. I run group and private coaching programs on building healthy boundaries. Whether you need help with boundaries in your personal, professional, or romantic life, I can help. Head on over to barbchat.net, where you can hop onto my calendar for a free 30-minute Better Boundaries consultation. My ideal client is someone who is ripe for change. If that's you, I would love to work with you. My goal with all my work is to help you make lasting changes in your life, like I've made deep, lasting changes in my life. Remember, it's never too late to recover. No one is beyond hope, and healing is possible. Thanks for listening.